So what are chemical bonds? Chemical bonds are attractive forces that hold atoms together at a very specific average distance between the nuclei in order to serve as part of a unit. So then this group serves as one piece, one unit, one particle, a bigger particle. Chemical bonds occur whenever molecules or formula units are created when two atoms combine with each other, chemically combine with each other. Formation or breaking of a chemical bond is considered to be a chemical process because by doing so, a new substance is created. The substance whose properties are different compared to the atoms that combined in order to create that unit through chemical bonding. And the other very important part to remember is that the valence electrons are the only ones that participate in chemical bonding. The core electrons, electrons inside of the valence shell, are not affected at all during this process. That is why it is important to know how many valence electrons a certain atom have, so that helps us understand what kind of a chemical bonding that atom would like to undergo. There are two types of chemical bonding that we will consider, and those are ionic bonds and covalent bonding. Ionic bonding takes place when one atom donates electrons, valence electrons, or electrons from its valence shell to another atom that accepts those into its valence shell in order, remember, to satisfy the octet rule. So one atom wants to get rid of some of its valence electrons in order to satisfy the octet rule, while another atom happily accepts those into its valence electrons and therefore satisfies the octet rule. Whenever there is a physical transfer of electrons from one atom to another, that would end up creating an ionic bond. A covalent bond, on the other hand, does not involve transfer of electrons. It only involves sharing electrons, sharing such that both atoms are then capable of claiming those electrons to be their own, and therefore both atoms or both nuclei are able to satisfy octet rule and achieve that stability. That kind of a bond is called a covalent bonding. And so ionic bonding involves a physical transfer of electrons from valence electrons from one atom to another, whereas covalent bond involves sharing of valence electrons between with another atom, such that both atoms are then able to satisfy the octet rule. If you remember in a previous session, we said there are two kinds of compounds, ionic compounds and molecular compounds. The smallest unit in ionic compounds, the smallest unit that we define as a chemical formula, ionic compounds are made of ions, and it is ionic compounds are made through ionic bonding, and hence the term ionic. Molecular compounds, on the other hand, have molecules as the smallest individual particles, and these are made through covalent bonding, and because of that, molecular compounds are sometimes also known as covalent compounds. So the main difference between the two compounds is, the two kinds of bonds, chemical bonds, is that ionic bonding actually involves valence electrons leaving an atom and going to the valence shell of another atom, whereas in covalent bonding, valence electrons of two neighboring atoms just are shared with each other without actually losing claim to what they brought into the picture.